But look, we've got to start with this week's economic and markets drama. The worst fear is that it will spark a global recession. What it has done is spark an alarming trade war between the United States and China, with neither nation seemingly backing down. Australia, of course, has a free trade agreement with both countries, and that's rare. Canada, Chile and Singapore are the other examples. But it leaves Australia, which has a huge trade deficit with America and a massive trade surplus with China, in a very difficult position. Upset the US and defence and other ties are threatened. Upset China and another round of harmful tariffs could hit our agricultural products in particular. Australia, though a small economy, clearly plays a strategic role, and that was demonstrated this week in a fiery exchange in the US Senate between Democrat Senator Mark Warner and US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer.
Australia got hit with a 10% tariff as well.
Senator, Australia has the lowest rate available under the new program. They ban imports of American beef and pork.
Ambassador, excuse me. We already have a free trade agreement. We have a trade surplus. So getting the least bad, why did they get whacked in the first place?
They ban our beef. They ban our pork. They're getting ready to impose measures on our digital companies. It's incredible.
Australia basically denies access to its huge market, but not as a result of tariffs so much as non-tariff barriers to trade.
Australia also blocks on specious, fake science grounds, the export of fresh and frozen U.S. pork.
That's in the US Senate, remember. Now, one person with unique insight into the ways of both China and America is Gary Locke. He's the former US ambassador to China and America's Secretary of Commerce under Barack Obama. As ambassador to China, he was the first Chinese American to serve in that role. And I spoke with him earlier from Seattle. And first up, I asked him, who will blink first in this trade war, Xi Jinping or Donald Trump?
This is very serious because so much of what Americans consume every single day, and even businesses use as components every single day in the products they manufacture, come from China. And with these tariffs, when you add also the tariffs that President Trump imposed during his first term, are over 150%. That means the retail establishments, our Walmarts, our Home Depots, our Target stores and Costco and Nordstroms, when they order something from China, they're going to have to pay more than twice the price of what they normally paid for. Well, that's going to get passed on to the consumer. And so the consumers are going to take this and it's going to raise their cost of living, increase their expenses per household, per family. And it also means, quite frankly, that there's less money in the pocketbooks for Americans to spend on other things. And so our economy will suffer. At the same time, jobs will suffer in China, because if China ships less to America because of lower demand in America due to the high prices, then there's less to make. And when there's less to make, you don't need as many workers, and that will lead to high unemployment or increased unemployment in China. The same thing in America. China is retaliating with almost 80% of tariffs. That means the cost of that American good is almost twice as much as what it used to be. And so the Chinese aren't going to buy those American goods. They're going to watch what they spend on. That means less demand for American goods. Don't need to make as much in America to ship around the world. And that means fewer jobs. And that's going to lead to higher unemployment in America. So in a trade war, both sides lose, workers and consumers.
So you have dealt with Xi Jinping, you have dealt with Donald Trump on the other side. These are both two very strong leaders, pragmatic leaders. Which one of these blinks first? Who has got the upper hand in this trade war?
Well, actually, neither side really has an upper hand. Each country has different strengths that they can pivot to. China can really try to focus on domestic consumption. They can try to sell some of their products to other countries with which they have trade deals. They could really try to develop both economic and political ties with other countries around the world. But they can also say, we're a proud country, just as Donald Trump is a very proud individual. And Xi Jinping does not want to be seen to his people, as well as people and countries around the world, as capitulating to America, because the Chinese for quite some time have bristled at what they think as America's dominance and almost almost setting the rules for everyone else and not allowing others to have input. Donald Trump, of course, is a very proud person. He's not going to want to be seen as capitulating, although he did reverse course with the tariffs on all the other countries around the world and pausing these extra tariffs for 90 days and perhaps even longer. So I would not expect either person to make a phone call to each other. And perhaps we're going to have to rely on a former prime minister or high-level diplomat that can perhaps engage in shuttle diplomacy and quietly bring together a deal.
So what type of person would that be? What country would you imagine that person would come from that would have relationships that are strong enough with both countries to be able to try and broker a deal?
Well, we have many former prime ministers from around the world, whether it's the UK or even Australia and other parts, and simply retired diplomats or even a high-level business person who's respected both in Washington, D.C. and in Beijing.
So one thing that strikes me also is with the dislocation of markets, even if Donald Trump is right with his tariffs policy, and even if he can bring manufacturing back to America, which is his aim, it takes time to build factories. It takes time to build a semiconductor plant, a steel plant. So there has to be an economic shock in the meantime until those plants are built, even if he is right.
Yes, and not all jobs can be brought back to America. Not all manufacturing can come back to America. It's even been said that there's no way that Apple can produce their iPhones in America at even close to the cost of what they incur in China, and that the cost of an iPhone in America would be exponentially higher than what it is now. And of course, with the tariffs, those iPhones are already going to go up in price, which is why Apple sent many airplanes to fill up the cargo bays with iPhones to bring them back to America prior to the tariffs taking effect. But it will take years to build a factory, a semiconductor plant, a high-tech plant. And it will not happen overnight. And in the meantime, the consumers of America will suffer with all these increased costs because so much of what people buy every single day comes from China. And there are very few readily available substitutes for the microwaves that we purchase, the clothes, the shoes, the tools, electronics, and the list goes on and on. And even if they try to move some of these factories, let's say Sony or another company or Apple wants to set up a factory someplace else, it could take 4, 5, 6 years. And in the meantime, American consumers will pay the price.
So I know that you know Australia well from your time in the Obama government, and Australia plays a unique part, literally a relatively small economy, but strategically important between the United States and China. What role does Australia play into the future, and what impact do these tariffs the US tariffs have on Australia, for goodness sakes?
Well, the tariffs that President Trump wanted to impose on Australia really didn't make much sense because we have a trade agreement between Australia and the United States. And the United States actually has a trade surplus with Australia. I mean, we sell more to Australia than we buy from Australia. So why was President Trump and his people who said that trade surpluses and deficits are a key driver to these tariffs, why did he impose such high tariffs on Australia? So I think what's going to happen with all countries around the world, and certainly in the Asia Pacific, is that they're going to try to develop stronger economic ties with China because is America really reliable? Can people take America at its word, whether it's on security arrangements, economic arrangements, or aid?
So then it worries me because if suddenly you get very strong economic ties with China, then quite clearly China is seeking to increase its defence ties in the Asia Pacific as well. Does that therefore pose a risk to the stability of the world?
Well, there's a lot of instability going on in the world right now, and so people in the EU are questioning America's commitment to NATO. The people of Ukraine, of course, are questioning whether or not America will stand with Ukraine. Even the people in Taiwan are wondering, will America really come to their defense? Let's just hope that this trade war is settled quickly and fairly for all the parties and that there are win-win solutions. And let's just hope that during this pause of 90 days or more, that the White House can negotiate some arrangements and deals that satisfy both sides, because we don't want a trade war, certainly not with China, certainly not with Australia, certainly not with the EU and many other countries.
But as you sit there in America right now, and you heard about the concerns about the economic outcomes this week from the likes of Goldman Sachs and the likes of JP Morgan, is your grave fear that if there is not a settlement of the trade war, that a global recession or a global economic downturn is the inevitability of this?
Well, obviously, even though the markets reacted favorably when President Trump reversed course and announced the 90-day pause, the markets have since gone back down because there's no guarantee that there will be an agreement after 90 days or 100 days or 120 days. And so that uncertainty is causing people to withhold investments, not expand their manufacturing facilities, not hiring more people, and consumers are worried. And so they're kind of holding back. And certainly retirees with their pensions having been dramatically lowered and shrunken because of the turmoil on Wall Street. Everybody's concerned, and everybody is very concerned and facing this period of unpredictability, uncertainty by simply not doing anything. And that's how the economy can slow down.
Gary Locke, the former US ambassador to China and America's Secretary of Commerce. I appreciate your time on the program today.
My pleasure.